The Lift & Co. Cannabis Expo returns to the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, November 18th to the 21st. Discover and learn about all things cannabis. Get your tickets at liftexpo.ca. Must be 19 plus to enter and attend.
I have more energy later in the day than I usually do, or when I'm eating, my stomach doesn't hurt as bad, or whatever. There's so many ways that the CBDA specifically can help you. And so I always just encourage people to learn more about it and to critically think about the way that the plant is handled and why that's important in how it affects your body. And so that's usually the type of conversations that I have with them.
Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast, the show that inspires, promotes, and gives you a daily dose of inspiration from the people who have used cannabis to change their lives in extraordinary ways. Here's your host, Justin Benton.
Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast, where we talk about this miracle plant with so many names helping people out in extraordinary ways. Today, we have a special guest. Someone who's been along for the ride and seen incredible things happen on a daily basis. She actually works with us, and she has a hand in making sure that these incredible products get delivered around the world to the people who need these products the most. Mary Moir, how are you? Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be on the podcast finally. I've heard you recording, I don't know how many of these now. And I thought, you know what? It's my turn.
Absolutely. I know you're a podcaster to be as well, so it's fun to get on these podcasts and see how they work. And they're not as hard as they seem, and the hardest thing is usually just the consistency of doing it every week. But we're so happy to have you here. I know that you literally have had a hand in helping our products get delivered around the world. And I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit of your journey about this miracle hemp plant or cannabis plant, whatever you want to call it, and how has it helped you or how has it affected your life?
Yeah, definitely. So I have been working with 101 CBD for almost 2 years now, and I love what I do. I love being a part of this company. And before this, I was working in an office setting and hated my job. And my whole life, I suffered with migraines pretty bad, going back to when I was in high school. And during that time, I didn't know a whole lot about how bad things like Tylenol and Excedrin and stuff like that really are for your body. And I remember taking a lot of specifically Tylenol, like extra strength Tylenol, to deal with all the migraines that I was getting. And when I was working at my office job, all of the stress migraines I was having got pretty severe. I was in pain usually 5 days a week. And by that point, I didn't want to continue taking the over-the-counter Excedrin, things like that to deal with it. So I usually would just suffer through my day at my office job. And then when I would get home, I would smoke weed or I would take edibles or whatever to deal with all of the pain that I was in. I used to get really bad tension in all of the muscles in my back and in my neck, and it was pretty bad. And then I finally realized that I hated that job enough that I really wanted to leave. And thankfully, I got the opportunity to work here. And after I started taking I think the first product I ever took was Alleviate Citrus. And I noticed almost immediately that it was helping me so much with the pain throughout the day of constantly waking up with a migraine. If you are a migraine sufferer, that's like first thing in the morning before you even open your eyes and your head's pounding and you're like, oh, great, it's going to be a bad day. But pretty much immediately after I started taking the Alleviate, I noticed that I was able to deal with the pain throughout the day, and I consistently would take it 2 to 3 times a day. I was going full droppers because that's what I felt like I needed at the time. And now I've gotten to the point where I actually don't remember the last time I've had a migraine. It's probably been over a year now since I had a full-on migraine. And I noticed the more I took it, the less severe they were, and then the less often that they happened. And now I'm at the point where I don't even consider myself like a migraine sufferer anymore. I don't even say that I have migraines because I don't remember last time I've had one. So that's how my journey with CBD went. I definitely tried other brands, I tried other products, and some of them helped a little bit more than others. A lot of them had a lot of THC in them, so I wouldn't like taking it during the day because I wanted to not be high at work or whatever. But definitely, I never tried any other product besides ours that really helped in the way that it did. And essentially, in my opinion, like cured me of whatever underlying cause that was causing all the migraines I was having. That's kind of my journey with our product specifically. And it definitely majorly impacted my life in a positive way for sure.
That's awesome. And back in 1936, before the industrialists like the Hearsts and the DuPonts pulled the wool over Americans' eyes and passed the 1937 Marijuana with an H Tax Act, like 2.3 million prescriptions were written by doctors. And the American Medical Association went to Congress after they passed that horrendous bill and said, "What are you guys doing? We're using this on a daily basis to help our patients." And one of the main reasons was migraines. And it's really unfortunate that for that time period there, for 75 or 80 years, people didn't have access to a healthy alternative that would actually help alleviate the migraines and wouldn't hurt your liver and kidneys and insides of your stomachs and things that those over-the-counter aspirin and Tylenol and ibuprofen that does. Yeah, it's amazing. And sometimes I think we take this miracle plant for granted. I know sometimes I do. And it's because sometimes you just forget where you were or where your family member was and how desperate you were to find relief. And because now you're just living your life. And if you get a headache or you're not feeling so well, you just take a bunch of of our products or a whole plant product and you get relief. And so, yeah, it's crazy to think that you were living with migraines on a daily basis and now you aren't. That in and of itself should be on billboards and commercials and you sitting next to Oprah and people like, "Oh my God, we found something that you can take that helps get rid of debilitating migraines and it's good for you as well." But for some reason, we're just not quite there. So I guess we're just going to have to keep having these conversations on podcasts and on Clubhouse. We're actually doing this podcast live on Clubhouse for fun. And anywho, but yeah, thanks for sharing that story. And of course, it's just a blessing to you and to all of us that we've had this miracle plant intervene in our lives and be such a positive impact. And now that you really are running the back end of the organization, and you've heard and seen a lot, or there's some favorite stories from either your friends or family or from some of our clients you've seen over the years that kind of stand out to you as far as when you really, maybe some of the earlier ones when it really started to click, like, holy cow, this is really something here. This isn't just your regular CBD oil for little aches and pains. This stuff's really making an impact.
Yeah, definitely. Besides my own experience with it, it's funny to say, but it's hard to remember because there's so many of them. Like it happens so often that we hear stories about people who were in so much pain for years and years, or people who suffered with insomnia for years, who started taking our product and suddenly they have like their life back again. But probably one of my favorite stories is it's happened fairly recently. I'm not going to share her name obviously, but there was a family member purchased it for their mother who had some type of cancer, that she had tumors, and she was taking, I believe, the 3200. She was taking the highest dose that she could, obviously. And they sent us an email, I think, after a few months of her taking the product, and she had gone back to her doctor and gotten the scans or whatever. And the only thing that she had changed in the time that she had previously gotten the scans was that she started taking our product. And when they got the scans back, her tumors had shrunk in size by almost like half, I think he said. And the doctor was like, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, keep it up. And that was, I hear stories like that all the time, but that was one of those things that you're right, we do take it for granted. I definitely take it for granted having such close access to such an amazing product that I will go a while without taking it, and then I take it again. I'm like, oh God, it works so well. And so when I hear stories like that so often, it's just, that one stuck with me because sometimes I forget how life-changing it can be for people, and how life-changing it is for most people that end up taking it. But that one really hit home because I was like, wow, how amazing it is to be able to work here and to be helping other people find relief from illnesses or pain that they've been in their whole life, or to give them hope that they can still continue to have a life, and that whatever prognosis they got from the doctor might not be their fate, that there is hope. And so I don't know, that definitely stuck with me. But there's so many stories I hear all the time, even the very minimal ones of like, I wasn't able to sleep and now I fall asleep every night with no issue. Like all of those seem like a blessing to me. And something that I've always wanted so much in my life is to help other people. And being here and working for 101 CBD, I feel like I'm fulfilling that. And so it's just, and all the stories we hear just really sit with me.
That's awesome. And yeah, it's crazy. That's why we have the Miracle Plant podcast. That's why we work as hard as we do to get our message out on the internet, or travel to shows like NOCO that we just had last month. That's why we give talks at medical communities and anywhere we can. We just keep telling these stories because not enough people know about the power of this plant. And there's such a huge stigma that's out there, that people think that it's just people that want to get high and they just want to roll joints and they just want to get stoned. And look, there's two parts of the plant, and there certainly is the recreational side, but there's the medicinal side that more and more people are starting to be awoken, to be enlightened. And I just saw a poll recently, last couple of weeks, that said 91% of Americans are in favor of some form of legal cannabis in the United States. And I mean, that 91%, I don't even think we could get 91% of Americans to agree that the color blue is blue. So it's just incredible that we really are starting to come together. Now, another question for you is, because you are a millennial, and different generations have different perspectives and different experiences and are at different stages of their life. As far as in the millennial community of your friends and your circle of people that you roll with, what do they think? What would you say millennials think about CBD? And you certainly can expand more into medical marijuana or cannabis, but what overall, what do you think the general consensus is, or just the understanding, if you could sum it up for the folks that you run with?
I would definitely say the people within my kind of age range, unless they directly work within the medical marijuana or in any facet of the cannabis industry, I would say most people my age have a basic understanding of CBD. They understand that it's not going to get you high, that it's different from THC in that way. But I think that as far as people understanding like CBDA, very little, unless they're around me, in which case I love to talk about it and I love to educate people on what we do here and why CBDA is so important. But as far as like people just having a general knowledge of CBD, I think most people within my age bracket, they understand it. Like if I said CBD, they would know what I was talking about. But it's most likely going to be like a limited understanding of what it really does and all the benefits it has and how it works with your body and that our bodies actually produce it and things like that. I think all of that information is still not really known by them. And I don't know if that's because a lot of people are still heavy into more high THC cannabis and things like that, which I am too. There's no problem with it. But I think that because of that, people don't maybe look to see all the benefits that CBD can do for them. And usually when I would say people with millennials in general, like if they're getting a CBD product, they're most likely going to get it from a dispensary, in which case there's nothing wrong with getting CBD from dispensaries, but in which case most of them have some higher dosage of THC in them, and it's not strictly a CBD product. Or if it is, it's definitely not CBDA and most likely like an isolate product. And I think that there's still a lot of education to happen to millennials and things like that, which is obviously why the podcast is here, so we can get the information out so there's more people to understand why they should be taking CBD and how beneficial CBDA specifically is for them to be taking.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a great insight and look. So when your friends or do ask you about CBD or CBDA, what do you tell them? This is your chance, because this is going to probably be heard by a few million millennials. So this is your chance to enlighten them.
If I was having a conversation, which I've had many of these conversations with my friends, of why they should be taking CBDA specifically, I've heard you and Molly and Janet, I've heard everybody speak about this so many times that typically my pitch falls in similar, but the most important thing that I try to connect with people is, why would you take a beautiful plant and burn it and turn it into a white powdery crap? Why would you mess with Mother Nature and the way that she's giving us all of the different components of the plant that are naturally in there? Why would you mess with that? Rather, when you can basically just juice it the way you would any other like vegetable or, fruit that you're trying to gain all of the nutrition from, instead of burning it and messing with all the molecular stuff of that, just essentially juice it. And that's like the healthiest way that you can consume it and the most natural way that you can consume it. And that CBDA, I'm sure it's been repeated on this podcast many times about Dr. Meshulam and coming out and saying that CBDA was, I think, 1,000 times more powerful than CBD. And I think this study had to do with nausea, how that translates. That's why CBDA is so important versus just CBD. And there's a lot of products on the market that aren't that bad, but why would you settle for a product that's not that bad when you can get something that's really amazing that your body already knows what to do with, and your body is essentially asking for it? And when you take it, you really feel the difference between a product that's not that bad and a product that's extremely good, and that your body knows exactly what to do with it. The CBDA goes to every receptor, all of the cells in your body. So why wouldn't you be taking that? And I think that even if you're taking it for one specific reason, it usually helps in so many other facets of your life that you maybe didn't realize that you needed help with. If you're taking it for pain and suddenly you notice, wow, I'm sleeping so much better, or I have more energy later in the day than I usually do, or when I'm eating, my stomach doesn't hurt as bad, or whatever. There's so many ways that the CBDA specifically can help you. And so I always just encourage people to learn more about it and to critically think about the way that the plant is handled and why that's important in how it affects your body. And so that's usually the type of conversations that I have with them.
We were talking about dispensaries, and I'm on the California Hemp Council with Patrick Goggin out here, and we had a big.
This is the sound cannabis companies hear when they try to place an ad on Facebook, Twitter, or Google. The tech overlords' arbitrary discrimination against our industry is unfair, but until they change their restraint of trade policies, we need an alternative way to share our message with our customers. Cannabis podcasts are one of the last advertising platforms not controlled by tech monopolies. And for as low as $9.99 a week, cannabis companies have the freedom to play their uncensored commercials to customers around the world. Don't let tech bosses dictate how you run your business. Go to PodCONX.com. That's PodCONX.com. And for just $9.99 per week, you can go from this to this.
Call yesterday, and we're putting into law legislation and things like that we can pass. And there's a couple sticking points that we're having some issues with. And the cannabis community is really our biggest obstacle. And they're trying to introduce legislation that would tax hemp the same way they do with cannabis, 40%. And they're really just guarding their domain. And at the end of the day, when I go to the dispensary, so we have a dispensary up here, Ojai Greens, which I like. We have 3 dispensaries up here in Ojai. And I went up there on 420 just to see what was going on. And you look at the product selection of CBD products, and usually they'll only have one, if it's in stock, of a true CBD product. I think it's a 30-to-1. And so it's a legitimate CBD product. And that product's not always on the shelves. I didn't see it last time I went up there. And so what are the people who are reading these articles and blogs and seeing these amazing stories on Netflix or documentaries when they're looking for some type of relief for pain or anxiety or sleep? They're getting likely at least a 1-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD. And for people who are 50 years or plus, they're not interested in getting high. They're interested in getting healthy. They're interested in getting pain relief or stress relief or better sleep at night or a specific health ailment like an autoimmune disease. And the products that are in the dispensaries right now, just in my opinion, they are not up to snuff. And even when you buy some of the other products, because I like to sample a bunch of different stuff and just see what's in there and try some things. And THC is not my favorite cannabinoid. I do like THCA, but I will try a couple of different products. And it doesn't say on there in a lot of cases if it's full spectrum. I don't see a COA of the type of products that are. So my assumption is that a lot of the products that have CBD in them, a lot of those are made from isolates. And look, we all know the isolate model pretty much proved itself to be inadequate at best when you look at the pharmaceutical model. I'm certainly working with the California Hemp Council and legislation to figure out ways to get our hemp-derived CBD products into the dispensaries out here in California so that there is a great product for people that are just looking for the healthy benefits of the plant without the high. So I'm glad that you bring that up. And is that something that rings true with you as well? I know you've frequented a couple of different dispensaries out here in Ventura County. Are you seeing some quality CBD products when you go to the dispensaries?
Yeah, I definitely don't frequent the dispensaries as often as I used to for no particular reason. But when I was going to the dispensary, and that's when I was working at my office job and I was first trying to get into CBD to help with all of the pain that I was in, I was going to the dispensaries in Port Hueneme actually to find a CBD product that I could take during the day that would help with the pain. And at that point, I was not super knowledgeable about CBD. So when I went in, I really wasn't I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't understand the ratios. I didn't know. And I have been an active cannabis user pretty much since my teenage years, but I still wasn't super educated about what was going to help me or what I needed. And my experience with going to the dispensary and getting a CBD product was the bud tender that was helping me was also not super knowledgeable about how to use the CBD products more to help with pain versus people who are just trying to get high. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no issue with that. But there is a difference between, hey, I'm really struggling with something and I need a product to help me and I need to be able to be functional during the day. And I think I ended up getting, the first time I went, I think I ended up getting like a 4-to-1, which it's not too much THC, but I was having to take so much of it to get the relief from all the pain that I was in that I ended up not being able to use that product during the day, which is what I sought it out for because I was getting too high at work. And there's nothing wrong with being high, but I just didn't want to be high at work. And so that has been my experience. And after I think I used the end of that bottle. I couldn't even tell you what brand it was at this point. But after that, I didn't even try to go back to the dispensary to find a new one because I just chalked it up to this isn't going to work. I can't be high like this during work. So I'm just going to suffer through the day. And then when I get home, I'll just pound my edibles or whatever so I can get enough relief to fall asleep at least. And so unfortunately, I feel like that's a common reality for people who don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what they need, but they know that they're in pain or they can't sleep or they need help with something. And so they go into these dispensaries thinking that this is the only place that I can get a CBD product to help. And I think that there's a general lack of knowledge and education among dispensaries in regards to the benefits of CBD specifically and CBD alone, not for recreational THC to have a good time. And so I do feel bad when I think about these sweet little old ladies that are going in that just need something to help them sleep or to help with arthritis or something like that. And unfortunately, they might get sent home with something that has high THC and then they have a bad experience or whatever. And then they just chalk it up to, okay, CBD is not going to help me. I don't want to get high. And then they never try it again. Because I know that I also had that. I almost had that experience until I tried our product. And I think that's unfortunately a reality for a lot of people. And they just don't know where to look to get the right kind of product that they need.
Agreed. And that's definitely one of the biggest reasons for me to continue to pursue what is the best way to get our products into dispensaries, because there's such a huge gap for just quality whole plant cannabis products that aren't going to get you high. And it's a huge gap. And so I'm going to continue to go in there and once we get all the regulations figured out here in California, to make sure that our products are there, if for no other reason, so we can go in there and educate bud tenders. Some places are better than others, but as a whole, I think the experience that you had is probably pretty much par for the course. Before we wrap up, I do want to bring up, you had a funny story if you wanted to tell it. I said earlier that I wasn't the biggest THC Delta 9 fan. It's not my favorite cannabinoid. I love all the cannabinoids, but it's not my personal favorite. I do love CBDA. That's my personal favorite. But I said I like THCA. And for those that probably don't even know what that means, I know you had a conversation with a bud tender not too long ago about THCA and all of those kinds of funny things. And he was a bud tender. Yeah. And so if you could share that story as we're wrapping up, I think that would be a good story to share based on what we've been talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, it was probably about a year ago. I remember coming to work and telling you specifically right after this happened, but he was a friend of my roommate or whatever, and he was a bud tender, and he was over one night and he was saying something about, I don't know, he like made a joke about, I think, snorting weed or something. And then he had mentioned something about, oh, if I ate this, like I would get so high or something. And I was like, what are you talking about? No, you wouldn't. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And you're a bud tender. What are you talking about? And he was trying to totally mansplain to me that if he ate this big nug, he would get so high and all of this stuff. And I was sitting there and I was like, no, that's literally the reason that people you either set it on fire or you like burn it down to wax, you burn the cart, like you have to convert the THCA, like you have to decarboxylate it into THC, and that's what gets you high. THCA doesn't get you high, THC does. And THCA turns into THC by decarboxylating it. So you eating that random nug is not going to get you high. And him and I went back and forth for I don't even know how long. And he was so adamant that he was right. He was totally just, you don't know what you're talking about, all this stuff. And I was like, sir, this is literally your job. Like, you are literally a bud tender. I feel bad for everybody who has to go in and get information from you because you don't even know what you're talking about. And so we had this whole conversation. He wasn't going to let it go. So I was like, all right, whatever. Believe what you want to believe. And then I think a few months passed or whatever, and I saw him, and then we had the conversation again, and he finally admitted, he was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. That I can't get high from eating just weed, that you have to decarboxylate it. And I was like, yeah, thank you. I knew that I was right. But yeah, so that's the scary part of the unfortunate reality of people going in looking to get information from bud tenders is you really just don't know who actually knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. But yeah, that is quite a funny story. But I remember coming in and telling you all about that and just being like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that he really thought that he was right.
That's a funny story. I love that. And it's a little sad that where people go to get information and basically like a consultation of what would be the best product for them, that there's just that huge gap there. So we have a lot of work to do And we'll just keep having these podcasts and keep figuring out ways to educate people about this plant. And yeah, I'm so happy that you had a chance to come on, and we're so grateful for all the hard work that you do and help spreading our mission to heal the world by sending out products. We're up here in Ojai, California, and it's amazing that I sometimes sit back and think Mary has a pretty cool gig, because she has a hand in every order that goes out around the world and at our retail location. So for all the healing that's going on, she has a direct hand in it, and pretty powerful to be involved in so much just incredible stories like the ones you've heard here today. And we look forward to really taking this to the next level as the world is opening back up and everything's coming back online again. So we just wanted to say thank you so much for everything that you've done to help spread the mission. Thank you for coming on the Miracle Plant podcast. And any final parting shots or comments before we go?
I'm just very grateful to be here, very grateful to be on the podcast. Working with 101 has absolutely changed my life in a lot of positive ways. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to help spread the healing across the world and getting our products in the hands of people who really need them.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for listening, everybody. And thanks for Dan, who is producing the show on Clubhouse for us. And be sure to tune in next week where we have these thought-provoking, insightful conversations about this miracle plant. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.